Hey everyone, GW Xavier Mohr with More Memories from wonderful southern Indiana today. It was a really nice warm day, but it's before we're going to get a nice cold snap. So I figured it was a neat timing for the border that I was going to showcase for today. Inspired by one of last year's blog posts on borders using the Flurry of Fun border BMC, the Mittens and Flurries BMC. Sorry, the collection is called Flurries of Fun. And with the recent release of the Boots BMC with the Winter Bliss collection, I thought this would pair really nicely with the Mittens and Flurries BMC from last year's winter collection. So I'm going to create two borders that will match or coordinate with each other, mainly because I do lots of 2-page spreads. So I kind of want two kind of matching borders for that purpose. So we're going to use these two BMCs. We're going to use some inks, the new Winter Bliss inking stencil. So you're also going to need some, I just use painter's tape. You can use any kind of low residue type of masking type tape. This will come in handy with the stencil itself. I'll show you that. You might want your silicone mat for repo tape when you have to tape the pieces together, along with regular tape if you like that. And obviously we'll need our 12-inch trimmer and craft mat as well. And if you don't have a craft mat, it's not the end of the world. I can show you a little bit of a different way to still create this. Just using some scrap paper as an underlayment for yourself so that you don't end up inking all over. And then of course you're going to need your papers. So I've already did the one side of the border, so I'm going to demo the other side. So for this, I'm using the Flurries of Fun paper collection, and I'm using cool gray for my punch outs. I'm also using bright white cardstock in the background, and then of course the inking stencil. You can see at the top, the bottom, and in the middle as a extra embellishment. For the other side one, I'm going to copy this design, but instead of the inking stencil, I'm going to use some embellishments from the Polar Lights collection. So this will hopefully all work out really well. So let's get a little organized. Let's just get some things off to the side. Because first, let's just cut our paper strips that we're going to need. So just get your trimmer. And of course, if you like to use the decorative edge blades, go ahead. You can certainly use those if you would like. And so using the blog instructions, I just kind of tweaked some of the measurements only because originally it calls for 3x12 as your base. I tend to like kind of smaller, thinner mats and borders versus thicker ones. So there's something about, I guess, only using up 5 inches of a 24-inch spread that speaks better to me than taking up 6 inches, but to each their own. It's going to work either way. You just might have to tweak your measurements a little. So first, you're going to need those 3 papers. So you're going to want 3 coordinating papers. I'm using the bright white as the middle base. I think it just kind of works really well for the silhouette of the punch outs as well as the inking. So, and then I went with a coordinating blue and kind of gray to play off of the inks that I'm going to use. Okay. So that base paper, that biggest cut that you're going to need, I'm going to cut at 2.5 by 12 of my bigger base. In this case, it is the blue, the dark blue. So again, 2.5 by 12. I'm going to set that aside. I won't need that right away. I'm then going to take this frosty print, this gray-blue frosty print. I'm going to come in at 2 3/8, which is the, so again, I have that cutting guide on the handout, but 2 3/8 is the midway point between 1/4 and 1/2. Again, 2 3/8. I don't think I got that on. There we go. And I'm going to bring that, I'm going to trim this down to 11 3/4. So I want a 2 3/8 by 11 3/4 strip here. Then I got my bright white, and on that one, I'm going to come in at 2 inches. I'm going to do 2 by 11.5. So let's get this lined up correctly. And then by 11.5. Okay. And so then these will layer nicely in a thinner type of frame. That for me is kind of what I prefer aesthetically. If you kind of like the thicker or the wider sizes, you can do in your main base 3 by 12. The next accent would be in 2.5 by 11.5. And then your middle one would be 2 1/4 by 11 1/4. But again, if you like the thinner one and you want to follow along with what I'm doing, the main base is 2.5 by 12. This first accent is 2 3/8 by 11 3/4. And then the middle white is 2 by 11.5. We can put our trimmer aside for now. We won't need it till we make our BMC cuts. But right away, I'm going to put my 2 prints to the side. I'm going to take the new gray flannel ink, and I'm just going to ink the sides of this panel just to have it ready to go. And it's just very simple. We just glide our ink pad along the edge of the paper, and it just helps give it a little bit more definition and stand out a little bit more on our paper. And I'll just show you that real quick. You can see it kind of gives it a little bit of almost like a background without adding a background to it. So we got that. So next we'll get our inks. So again, we're going to keep using that gray flannel, and we're going to use Summer Sky. We have our ink brushes, and we have our stencil, and we have our tape. So I'm left-handed, so I'm getting out of order here. We get our craft mat as well. Okay, So what I used on the stencil was this kind of snowflake type of poinsettia-like edge. And I did that at the top and at the bottom. So that's what we're gonna do next. So the first way we can do this, obviously if you've got the craft mat and everything, we're gonna get this situated. So I sized this to have 4 of the edge flakes, I guess I'll call them, will fit along the bottom here. So that's what I'm going to use my tape, one part of my tape for. So I'm just going to take some tape here. Since it's a thick piece, I'm just going to tear this in half. You might, if you have thinner tape, you might need to use a couple pieces. And so what I'm just going to do is I'm going to bring one piece along the edge here, stopping just underneath, because I don't want to get ink in the other parts of the stencil and it ends up somewhere on my paper. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm just going to bring this as another guide. Here's where it's going to stop for me anyway. So I've got my stencil taped. I leave this out just because it can help add a little extra stability. I don't have to, if I can tape it down a little bit, I don't have to worry about it shifting so much for me. So then I'm going to position it along the bottom, and I want it where there's the tips just about touch. Oops, I mismeasured that. I'll fix that. The tips just about touch the bottom, but not fully, because I want a little of the inking at the bottom. I just want to try to keep this straight as possible. I'll just put this down so now it's secured a little bit. I'll take my inks and I'm just going to put a dab on my mat. That's all I'm going to need. I'm going to start with gray. I'm going to go a little dark and shade then with the lighter blue. So again, we just get a little bit of the ink on our brush. And then I'm going to just very, very lightly come in along the bottom. And I'm going to start from the outside off the paper and onto the stencil. And actually, I caught one other spot I need tape real quick. I don't want to ink these boxes or that part of the tree. There we go. So I'm going to start off the edge here and I'm going to lightly come in. And again, I'm being very, very light touch because it can be a dark ink. And I just go along the stencil. I might need to dab and get a little more ink going. And we just keep working in the ink along this stencil. So again, be mindful with this gray because we can already see a little bit. It's getting a little dark here. So I just want to be a little careful with how dark I go. If I want, a more of a lighter tone here. If I want bold, right, I will continue using, I'll just use more of that ink. I want to make sure I get in here. Now I can bring my blue, and I know I smooshed it on here. I don't know where I have it because it's a very light blue. Difficult to see, so I'm going to put some more here. Get it on my brush, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to overlay on top. And it's going to give a nice color blend to this. And if I'm curious, I can always check, pull up a little bit. I think that's perfect. I don't want to do any more darker. So then I'm just going to flip this around, and I'm going to do the same thing at the other end here. So I'm going to line this up. Okay, and I'm just going to repeat. Get my gray and start shading in. Now, if you don't have a craft mat, the other way you could do this, certainly, using scrap paper in place of your craft mat, placing, it underneath your workspace. You can take the inks and you can apply directly onto the brush. The thing you want to remember though is that you're going to be able to put more ink on that brush. So I recommend just maybe 1 or 2. You'll be able to see it better on your brush. And again, you're going to be very, very light and gentle with the dark. And you'll be able to go in and shade in. Same with the lighter. Right, so again, maybe 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, depends. Judge it by your eye. And then lightly coming in. And blending that. So if you don't have a craft mat, you can still do these. You just need to be a little bit more careful about how much ink you're getting on your brush, and do small spots, 1, 2, or 3 strokes onto your brush, and go from there, because we can always add to it. We can't take it away once it's there. So we'll lift, and I think that's a nice contrast as well. So we're gonna set this aside, or the craft mat and stencil aside real quick, because we are going to probably need it again. But now we can assemble some of our border. So we'll get our 2 strips together while the ink dries, and it is a fast drying ink. You don't have to let it sit for a long period of time. By the time we're done putting some of this together, that's going to be perfectly ready to go. So we're just gonna put our accent on top of our bigger piece, centered. Like so. That. Next, I'll put this over here. we can do our punches. Unfortunately, these are designed in a way, I tried to figure it out, like maybe I could just use one piece of cardstock and punch on both, punch in a way where I can get them and conserve a little bit. Unfortunately, they're not designed that way, so I'm gonna have to do them individually. So first off, and I already have enough pieces punched from this morning when I made the other border. You're gonna end up with about 6 pieces, 6 from your boots and 6 from here, so you'll have 12. So I'm not going to punch more, but we'll just walk through what we would do. So we would load our paper in, load in your mittens punch, and then punch along. Since it is a knockout, what we would have to do is then put it on our trimmer. And what I did to trim my mittens, I didn't want a thick bottom part. So I trimmed at 1 1/16, which is the first, so here's our 1-inch mark. This first notch after that is our 16th mark. So 1 1/16 is where I lined my paper up and trimmed that. And then I took the strip, and I might have a spare something. Maybe not. Maybe I don't. I thought I had it somewhere. Then I took my strip and I cut them into 2-inch pieces on the trimmer. Okay. Then, right, I swapped out my cartridges. Now the boots cartridge, it cuts the bottom part. So it's cutting, it's an edge, it is a knockout edging where it will give us this scalloped bottom part, because here's the edge of the paper. It will punch out this way. So I don't have to trim this one except for when I want to make the pieces. And again, these are also in 2-inch pieces. So again, real quick, I would load up my paper again. And I would punch through with my boots. I'm gonna have a full strip already separated from the paper that's in the holder. And I'm going to then cut those into 2-inch pieces. Okay. I'm done with my VMS, so I can put that aside for now. I should also be done with my trimmer once I have all my pieces. I can put that aside. I'm gonna come back with my craft mat and my inks. And what I wanted to try is maybe putting a little shading just along the edge of the white border. Nothing a lot, just a very light shading edge. And this could be a step that you know, if you don't really want to do, you don't have to. I'm just thinking it might be a neat little extra. hard to kind of see because I'm being very, very light with it. And that is intentional because I'm not entirely sure that I'm going to want that effect. But I think it'll be fine. So I'm just going to add a little bit extra pressure here to get some of that ink in there. And then I'm going to do a little bit of the blue to give it more of that blend as well. And these two colors play very nicely. You can see from our stenciling how nice they paired together and create kind of a really neat, just a really neat palette there and color effect. Just getting into that little corner edge here. I think that'll work okay. So now I'm going to do some dry fitting because I'm not done inking. I think I'm going to use my stencil in between the same kind of flake poinsettia in between my pieces. So I'm just going to dry fit my pieces a bit. And so you'll kind of want to have an idea pre-made about like embellishments and you know, kind of placing, right? Because I'll bring this one over just to kind of think through, you know, do I kind of want them where the embellishment is pretty much in the same spot? Do I want to off-center that a little? You know, maybe I'll put my embellishment more towards the top to kind of give a different, where did I put them now? Just to kind of give a little bit of a different, you know, feel. All right, so these, you know, this will probably fit fairly well this way. Here-ish. So then so if I wanted to do this, I could do that. I think I like the idea of having like two at the top. This still kind of towards the top, but more in the middle. these. I can swap one out if I wanted to. And that's where I can then look to my stencil, right? I could bring my stencil in here and have another row. I could put stenciling at the top and at the bottom and have it be like a little mini border in between. And that's what I'm thinking I might do here. And I'm just eyeballing these aspects. Right, I am not necessarily doing any firm measurements. Mainly because I'm not that type of person. I tend to kind of do a lot more by eye than I do measuring. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. But where did my gray go? Here we go. I'll get some more gray on here. And we will start shading. Oops. See, I got quite a bit there already. So I'm just gonna work that in a bit more. And I'm sliding. Somehow I'm sliding. Okay. Then I'll come in with my light blue. Okay. That. I'm going to dry fit again, just to kind of get that sense of spacing. Okay. Down. And I should have enough of the gray here. Okay. Might need a little more blue. Okay. I can tell I'm going to have a little bit darker here, and that's okay. I might just add a little along here to kind of help that fade a little bit more. Okay. This off. You can dry fit again. Real quick. And I can play around with this when I'm ready to really put this down. But I think we'll have something along the lines of this. And what I think I'm actually going to do, I'm going to come into this white space a little bit more, maybe. Just to give it a little bit of a shade so it can blend in a little bit more. And again, I'm just going to be very, very light with the gray. Over the really bright white spots. I think that is good. It's a little bit different from that one, and I can go back and fix that because these are on repo tape, and I can just pop them off real quick if I need to. So I'm going to put my ink stuff to the side. Now we're going to put everything together. Ooh, there we go. So I'm just going to get some adhesive onto the back side of my white. I'm going to attach it into the middle. Okay. I'm going to get my repo tape and my silicone mat. And then I'm going to just start placing my pieces. Trying to match what I did on the other side. Okay. All right. I'm going to use my tweezers to help me. And then I'm just going to adhere. Again, I'm just eyeballing all of these parts. I'm going with kind of what looks good to me versus any standard measurement. The one thing you want to pay attention to, right, especially with the boots, is the direction of the boots. So you might just want to pay attention a little bit there. Make sure you're putting adhesive on the right side of the boots. You want all your boots going in the same direction. Unless you want them going in different directions, you could totally do that too. I think that would work. I kind of want to try to keep a little bit close to the same distance between things, but it's gonna be a little harder with 3 pieces here. Versus the top. I got my embellishments, and if I wanted to, I could even use, you know, some foam stickers to make them pop up if I wanted. I'm just gonna have to figure out how I want this to be positioned. I think that's what I'm gonna do this way. So, I'm gonna get a little bit of adhesive here. Because what I'm gonna do then is just that. All right. I'm gonna place this on here. There we go. And so here I've got my twin borders. And so you can see on the one side, I used the tree stencil with some of the snowflakes on this part. So I did have to kind of fudge around with the tree just because the 2-inch strip it just kind of cut off at the bottom of the tree on both sides. You can kind of see that where it just comes off the edge. So I just did one side first. I kind of switched to the other side, and then I worked on finding a spot that I could kind of, in a way, fudge them for the rest of it. And then, again, using the tape, taping off sections, applied the snowflakes and dots in a couple different positions to get that effect. So if you wanted to, you don't have to do that. If you don't want, you could use the other pieces of the boots and mittens, you know, and you could keep going in a alternating pattern and have something like that be your companion border if you would like. That'd be another option. So hope you enjoyed and hope this helps inspire you some more. If you need anything, reach out to your favorite advisor. Thanks for joining and happy scrapping.